Hello, hello. Today is September 1st. This is the bi-weekly release engineering subproject meeting for SIG release. This is a meeting that is recorded and available on the internet, so please be mindful of what you say and do. Please be sure to adhere to the Kubernetes code of conduct, and in general, just be awesome people. All right, so we've got a few things on the agenda. I'm going to sort of speed through, so we have time to discuss some other stuff towards the bottom of the agenda. But if you have questions, comments, and concerns, let me know. So we've got a few things in flight, or things that are coming up / in flight. The first of which is the final 116 release, which is scheduled for this Wednesday or tomorrow, September 2nd. Again, it will be the final release for 116, at which point we will start soon afterwards decommissioning jobs and whatnot. So please be mindful of that. Please be aware that the primary purpose of this release is to drain the queue of bug fixes and various things that were open, which was done Friday and over the weekend, I believe. Any questions on that? Okay. Sasha, are you fine to take that one? Do you want to hand it to someone?
Yeah, Carlos and myself will take it tomorrow.
Okay, great. Okay, next up is the second 120 alpha. It's 120 alpha 1. We need a date for this. This is something new to the process or recent to the process, where we try to cut a new alpha for the primary branch soon after the previous release. So 119.0 went out last week, and we want to make sure that we refresh some of the content that is on 120, especially given that the branch reopening policy, or the branch reopening plan is currently being executed. So really quick updates on the branch reopening. So essentially, Jordan put together a proposal for a phased reopen, something that we had discussed a little bit in the previous cycle before starting on 120 development work. So the TLDR of the plan is we're going to handle failing test fixes first, followed by a second step of dock and cleanup work, followed by low risk bug fixes, followed by bug fixes that may be higher impact, and finally the features or deprecations for the 120 release, which would be considered to be resuming regular development. So right now, over the release, so Thursday through the weekend and Monday, the failing test PRs have all merged. The dock and cleanup PRs have merged. The low risk bug fixes have merged, and I forklifted some of the open bug fixes into the milestone as of yesterday. So the queue is mostly drained. I'm going to be sending a follow-up email to the community a little later today. At this point, we're going to be requesting that the SIGs area component leads start to triage that queue, make sure that everything is reviewed and approved appropriately. And I think that we should discuss what we want to do with the 120 milestone. I feel that we should leave the milestone restriction on for a little bit, just ensure things settle out. but I want to take some opinions on that as well. Tim, have ideas?
I've been away the last week, so I'm a little distant from the status on things to know. Are there criteria that you're worried about?
It would mostly just be ensuring that CI signal is maintained for a few days.
Yeah, I mean, I think, are there any disadvantages? And so far, it seems like there haven't been any identified that would stop us from doing this.
Historically, the disadvantage has been called out as it hinders velocity, but having velocity without quality isn't necessarily a good thing.
Exactly.
So, I think we could even ask the other side of that question: why remove it? Having CI signal be good for 2 days or so, as Stephen mentioned, isn't as good as keeping it for the cycle.
So yeah, that was towards the end of last cycle, that's kind of what I was suggesting, and I didn't know if that was being too heavy-handed or not.
I guess people just aren't hearing it.
Say what?
I would guess that people just aren't hearing it. We always have communication issues on these things, and the desire to keep CI clean and how we would go about doing that, and the trade-off versus velocity being what we think of as a positive thing. I just don't think that enough of the milestone maintainers hear that message and consistently adhere to it.
So do you think there's something that we can, should, need to do in the short term?
I can agree with keeping it in place. I mean, so the milestone maintainers, there's like, what is it, 200 or 300 versus 2 or 3,000 people who can simply commit. So that changes the velocity, but it whittles things down the audience of people to whom we need to talk about ensuring quality and reacting to quality going down versus things just continually streaming in. I think it kind of it does a better job of federating the ownership of quality to people who are entrusted to actively do that. But we in a way we own the choice to declare that, but also we need them to step up to it. If we simply declare it and they're not doing it, it's not necessarily better. So we need to understand.
Oh, go ahead, please, go ahead.
And the question is, how do we actually communicate with them? I mean, we've got the emails that say action required to KDEV. We've got things out to the chairs and tech leads list through Contribex, but I do see hints of signs that people haven't read or seen or understood those still.
So just a number of things here. So, this could be like a teachable moment to sort of have folks reevaluate what milestone maintainer means to them, to recalibrate
Lori,
that expectation.
Real quick, if anyone is interested in taking notes, that would be great to have a note taker for this.
Good.
Sorry, Lori, to cut you.
No worries, no worries. It's a good point to make. So, it might just be like, maybe we need to let this idea simmer for a bit. What we would like to have these milestone maintainers do or be thinking about, and if the problem has been historically that we have framed plans around velocity and we want to see a slightly different approach going forward, then what is the message, basically? And then just as an aside, I'm reaching out to SIG chairs right now just to have them look at their KEPs So this is sort of tangentially related, but it's just like to say that I'm doing some outreach already to the chairs and tech leads. And so if we want to actually have them look at milestone maintainer work in addition, then I think it does fit in the sense that we're taking a moment to reflect. We want to do things differently in 120 and more sustainably, and with this concept of stability in mind. So here's another thing that fits under the umbrella of stability. Where do you see this going wrong? You know, where would this hinder you? I can attach that message into my outreach. If, you know, obviously I don't want to own it all. I think it comes from a variety of people, this messaging and this outreach, but this is just one interaction that I'm having at the moment. I can.
Let's maybe segment it out so the message isn't buried.
Garbled.
Not to say
Yeah.
not to say that it would be, but just to make sure that it's crystal. Like we have two levers here, and one is in place right now, which is the milestone restriction. The second arm of that is that the milestone maintainers group is a SIG release owned GitHub team, right? So I think it's definitely worthwhile and should be required of us to look back over what we consider a milestone maintainer to be. And I think it's absolutely within our right, given where the group is housed, to consider removing or adding more people to milestone maintainers. I think something to note about milestone maintainers is I think classically people have added SIG chairs and tech leads as milestone maintainers. Those are not the only people who can maintain milestones, right? So so people who are reviewers, approvers in those areas, based on what a SIG's requirement for becoming a milestone maintainer in their SIG is, should be added, right? I've seen, in some of the messages about draining the queue, I've seen PRs fly by with people updating their milestone maintainers, but I've primarily seen those updates to be adding chairs or technical leads that were not there before, as opposed to adding people who are not chairs or technical leads. So I think we could put a finer point on that. And overall, this sounds like an entirely other topic that we probably should discuss in SIG release. Or rather, well, we're in SIG release, but in the SIG release meeting.
Yeah, understood.
Okay. Any other thoughts before we move on? Okay. All right. So dependency updates. We've got a few recently. The first of which, or not the first, but the most imminent one coming is the Go 115.1 is a security fix that is supposed to land for today. So I'm going to be watching the Golang list for that. Once that starts up, I'll get started with the cube cross images and all that good stuff. Start rolling that over. Given that it's primarily security release, I don't see too many problems cropping up from that, but I'm gonna just knock on wood in case. So that should be coming soon into the 120 branch. The next up is CRI tools. Sasha, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So last week we cut the new version of CRI tools, and they are already merged into KK as well. So Mark coded that, and Carlos supported. So we used the GitHub to GCS tool from K release. Let me just link it here, which is a little utility to put binary artifacts from GitHub to GCS, and the main intention is to not hit API rate limiting when testing in our infrastructure. So that way we have all of the binary artifacts also available in GCS, which is pretty cool. And yeah, it requires some manual copying around from GitHub to GCS. And I think we would like to compile a list or some documentation around it, which projects are actually handled in that way. So we have CRI tools, and I think we also have CNI plugins, right? But we could think about probably other tools and binaries which have to be put into Google Cloud buckets.
Right. So few notes on that. First off, thank you for jumping on that. And thank you, Marco, for working on the PR. I did notice as I was doing the CNI updates that there may be some references that are not updated in Kubernetes for CRI tools. So, and I think primarily they got missed because they're not in the dependencies.yaml. So it's possible that a new reference to CRI tools was added, and it wasn't added to the dependencies.yaml as well. So I would do a search for 117.0, I think, in the code base, CRI and 117.0. I think it might be in cluster. If you do a hound search, or if I have time to find it later, I'll ping you on it. But there's one or two more references that need to be updated. For GitHub to GCS, that tool was created exactly for the reason that Tasha mentioned. Basically, we have a few projects to wrangle. It's really only two. The big ones that we care about are the ones that eventually end up as parts of the deb and RPM that we push for the release cycle. So those are CRI tools, are the CRI CTL and the CNI plugins, right? So container networking / plugins is that repo. So we ran into API rate limiting issues, but there's also the question of like provenance for the artifacts that we then package. So the request was that we have GCS buckets for that. So all the references in Kubernetes have been changed to point to those new GCS buckets, which means when these projects come out with new releases, we need to make sure that we update the buckets to include the new releases. That is currently a gap. I did not want to enable any automation until the tool was a little cleaner. Thanks to Carlos, you did a bunch of work on cleaning up that tool. I kind of landed the MVP and opened an issue for some bugs and features that I wanted, and Carlos totally ran with it. So thank you for that. I think it is close to the place where I would be okay with putting it in CI. The plan would be to create some sort of config directory in krelease config, I don't know, GH to GCS.yaml or something like that, right? That was kind of the reason for having it be able to support YAML configs, right? So we land a YAML config within our repo, configure a CI job to grab both the CRI tools repo as well as the CNI plugins repo, and we provide no config there, right? We basically point it at the repo and no configs that are specific to releases, so that it just grabs everything, right? That way those buckets are always up to date. And there's less of kind of like a back and forth mechanical process as we're trying to do updates throughout the release cycle, right? But yes, another gap is documentation, not so much for the GitHub to GCS tool. That is reasonably documented. What we need to include are what's the process, right? I think we have a bunch of open issues that have been open for some time because we were not aware of like ownership for certain tools. For the CRI tools stuff, Sasha's on top of that. For CNI, I've been working on wrangling some of that stuff, and we're finally in a place where we can like sit down and document it for real, right? There are lots of pieces that we didn't understand that over the past 2 cycles or so we do now. So yeah, so CRI tools update to 119.0. CNI plugins just released a 0.87. I've already merged the PR for that to Kubernetes, which means that we have to follow up with updates to the package specs for the debs and RPMs, as well as an update to the Debian Hypercube base image. So that leads into the base image updates. And I am working on a base image update right now for the Hypercube stuff, as well as some niceties, I guess, that will eventually allow us to support multiple building for multiple architectures across all of our images if we want to. So Marco, that was the PR that you reviewed. It's basically a hack script that enables Docker buildx, the Docker buildx command, which is currently an experimental feature, or perma experimental, I guess. That is the way we build multi-arc images across the various images that we have. Each of them is a little different, and I'd like to standardize on using that tool, as well as the multi-arch QEMU user static image that automatically sets up all the stuff for you. So more to come soon. I'll have some PRs flying within the next day or so on that stuff, and then we should probably step back and do write-ups for that too. 120 is going to be a lot of writing stuff up. So any questions on this stuff?
Yeah, I just want to add regarding CRI tools. Sorry if I missed to update any reference. I have followed the PR link by Sasha, and I was warned that there might be something else. I tried to search with Hound, but I was not able to find anything. If you find somewhere else, feel free to point me, just that I know what have I missed and where was it else. I can also take a look into that as well.
Yeah, no problem. It's more so it's a documentation thing, honestly, because they're like our flow has evolved over the last few cycles, and it continues to the point where where any documentation that was created is maybe no longer accurate. The dependencies.yaml piece is the big piece, because if a reference is not included in dependencies.yaml, it doesn't get picked up by the pre-submit, the pull Kubernetes dependencies pull pre-submit. So it's not your fault for missing it at all, but we'll work together and fix it. Last one is etcd 3.4.13. That was recently released before the 119 release cycle went out. We updated the client side to the new version, and there's a PR in flight that is currently being caught by I think a few kind failures to update the server side. So that should happen soon. I think the kind failures are related to resources. So that should be resolved as well. I see a few PRs in flight. Dan, I don't know do you know more about that?
You mean in regards to the kind failures?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know that it has to do with them not being able to schedule 2 nodes in the test cluster, primarily because they use the max CPU request that you could have. So they basically assume control of a whole node. So if they're racing with something that, has a smaller CPU request, then they're going to lose that pretty much every time. So last night or yesterday evening, we bumped down the CPU request. I wasn't sure. Ben had originally set that, so I'm not sure if that's going to cause issues with the test, but at least it should, get them running, and then we can see what the issue is, as opposed to them not being able to be scheduled. So I should also think that the cluster should auto scale in that situation. So not exactly sure what the issue is, but we should have more clarity on it today.
Awesome. Thanks for that. Okay, any questions on the dependency updates and what's coming? All right, on to Marco to chat about release manager and release manager associate responsibilities.
Yeah, Lori, do you want me to get started, or do you want to do this short introduction?
No, I think you should go for it.
Okay, so the thing I want to talk about is to discuss a little bit of responsibilities for release manager and for release manager associates roles. For some context, how this started, we had a bunch of discussions with Lori, and a few folks had a meetings. If I remember correctly, it was Veronica, Sasha, Lori, and me, and we gathered some points what could be improved regarding release engineering. And one of the dominant topic was that we wanted to enable more folks to do more things and to make sure that they can do those things. And one of the things that came up is the knowledge exchange, so that folks learn how to do the things they need to do. And the some point that come as follow up to that is to be able to successful come up with some knowledge exchange. We should probably decide what are roles of release manager and release manager associate, and what should we even do. Right now there is a lot of things, and like updates, releases, so on, many tools that we use, but I think that it will be helpful to have a list somewhere or some documentation that will describe what should we do and what are our responsibilities, what are the tasks that are we doing, what are tools that we are maintaining. I think that would be quite useful, and that would help us to get some, let's say, knowledge exchange getting started, so we can start learning and collaborating on what we are doing every day and so on. So I have looked a little bit into role books. I can send the link to the Zoom right now. Probably someone can share it in the document as well. We have two role books, and they're a little bit out of date because the branch manager and patch release team roles got now merged into one role. We now just have release managers and we have release manager associates, but the some of the tasks mentioned there are probably still relevant, and maybe we can use that as the starting point. But what I have wanted to ask folks, I wanted first to raise awareness for this and for these sections that we will be trying to do. And I wanted to try to discuss a little bit and want to hear what folks thinks that should be responsibilities of release managers and release manager associates. So if you have anything to add now, then I guess we can discuss a little bit about that.
Well, one question might be, what is the role of the release associate in relation to the other members of this group? Like just to create like a dotted line boundary. And that can help firm up the role. So like for everyone else, you know, what would you want to depend on a release associate to do and help you with?
Maybe I can provide a little bit of outside perspective if you want.
Yeah, sounds good. Go ahead.
So I've been trying to figure out what all of the branch manager and other people do for the last, I don't know, 6-7 months. And I've been trying to, everything by this time I think I understand what the release process does, but everything I have to learn, I have to learn it from reading the bash code, which is not the best of ways to learn. So at many points in the past, I've been watching the releases from the sidelines, so to speak, and I've been ready to jump in and help to do things, but it is a really opaque process. And I don't know if this is intentional, but for example, outside people cannot read the logs. And since I cannot read the logs, whenever something fails or is failing, I might have been able to give some time to help that. But since I cannot look at the logs or the output of the processes, I cannot, it's a really slow process to be able to help. And at one point I found an old log that someone left in a bucket somewhere, and that really helped me understand the process a lot more. But I think opening that, or at least giving some visibility into it, would really help other people.
So just to comment really quickly on the logs are explicitly hidden because there have been security issues in the past where API keys have been leaked, yada, yada, yada. It's bash, so things can be unsafe if you know, if things aren't properly quoted and whatnot. So those that's not currently an issue, but we do try to guard against that, right? So the release manager's associate's role, one of the intentions there is to provide people access to the logs, right? So that they can do this kind of debugging. And the actually, I'm gonna keep shutting up and let you and let others talk. So
That's all I have to.
Okay, I can try to add my 2 cents. This past cycle, I tried to help some associates, for example, Marky and Veronica. Like when they cut the alpha and beta releases, we had like a Zoom call and they did all the work. I was trying to teach, say you need to do this, you need to do that, and like following the existing documentation as well. But I think we need to do this maybe going back again, like from the beginning, like Stephen did several times, like open a Zoom call and then everybody can jump in and see what's going on. I think maybe we need to do that again, like, and make this maybe a common practice. Every time when we cut a release, we maybe open a Zoom call and then everybody can see. The problem is like there is some, like the stage part takes like 1 hour, 2 hours, and like there's nothing much to do like while waiting. And then I'm not a good speaker like Steven, like I'm talking for 1 hour. But I think maybe we can like do a session and jump in and explain. This is more about for the release cutting process actually, but we have other stuff that we do, and maybe we need to share that as well.
Some of us have given presentations in the past, probably in our work or at conferences, and I think there's a lot of help here at the Ready for just structuring that kind of discussion. So please don't hesitate in asking for that help. Many of us will jump in. And you might have that experience as well, but you know, you shouldn't have to do it all yourself. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I just want to quickly say, oh, sorry.
I just want to make sure I was clear, like if what I just said, like if we need to do trainings and sessions, like just doing the formatting is sometimes like the key in making all of it go a lot better. Like it's just, you just get it out of the way. It's a big hurdle. Like, we have a bunch of stuff. How do we organize it? You have help.
Yeah, so I wanted first to thank you for the feedback. And I actually agree with this because I think these sessions are very useful and they're a nice way to learn about and see how it actually works. Especially if you are associate and never have done it before. I actually like watching someone who has experience or done it before to see, okay, this is how it's done. And maybe even if it is recorded, as long as it is possible, Then I can go also later if I have to do it myself someday, it might be useful to have it as a reference. The problem here is, yes, as Carlos said, the release is a little bit harder because there are a bunch of commands, and now with curl it got, I hope, a little bit easier. I haven't done it personally, but I see that it is quite improved to what it was before with Anago and all other stuff. But I add that it will be also useful with all other stuff, like, I don't know, updating the dependencies or updating Go. It might be useful to have some session and see personally, this is some stuff that I'd like to see how is it done, because it is coming up very frequently, and it will be nice to just see, okay, this is what are the challenges and how it all works. And I guess it might be a little bit easier. Hopefully there are not stuff to wait for like in the release stage. And yeah, I think from that side, that would be nice addition.
So to add on to Carlos's point, I do believe that maybe an initial look into the release process is useful, but I don't believe that those sessions are exciting, or especially given that our release process takes the day, right? Between the mock stage release and official stage and release and image promotion and all that stuff, it takes 4 hours or so, right? And it's duplication of work. That we have sessions recorded. I think that we could do another one if people really, really, really want that. But I think that the sessions that we have recorded give sufficient detail into the process. For Release Manager Associates, you have access to the logs. So you do have that opportunity to look into the logs on the console.builds Google something. We can get you links if you don't have them already, but every release that is happening, when we do the release, we start a thread, and within the thread are links to all of the logs. So anyone who has access should be able to view them. So that's the first part. What I think is more interesting than the release process itself, the release process is such a small part of what we do overall, right? There's a lot more within the dependency updates, working on the tooling, having those conversations. The Go updates, I recorded 3 hours of content for that. If you're interested in watching, I think it's also on the playlists. It's both on the release playlists as well as I think the Contribx code walkthrough playlists. We can do another one of those if you're interested. We can tackle other dependencies. I think what I would be curious about is for associates. Been hearing, would like to get a better idea of what you want, right? If there is a topic that you want to cover, I want to explicitly know about it, right? There's a lot of stuff that we, if we're not providing adequate mentorship, I think one of the primary responsibilities of release managers is to mentor the people that are coming up, right? Before the tooling, people process tools, right? We handle the people first, right? So if you're not getting adequate mentorship, please let us know. Let us know what we can do. Let us know about specific topics that you want to know about. There is a lot of documentation to update. There are a lot of things to do. There are a lot of processes to think about. So being explicit in your requests helps us get an idea of what we should tackle first to help you out. So as you're thinking through this process and working with Lori, please be explicit. If there is a specific request that you are not getting feedback on, whether it be a PR issue, I know that there have been a lot that come through. I have a pretty large stack. Tim has a pretty large stack. I think in general, the chairs and technical leads have a decent chunk of stuff to work through. If we miss one of your requests, it's not because we're trying to ignore you or anything like that. Not to say that anyone is suggesting that, but we miss things. So don't feel like you're bugging us to let us know again that there's something that you'd like us to take a look at. If you're not getting feedback on something and you really need it, we recently created the SIG release leads at kubernetes.io list. That is a list that Tim, myself, Sasha, Jorge, and Lori are on. Send a note to that list if you're really not getting anything from us. Moving into future cycles, I've had the discussion with release managers that I want to make sure that they are spending time doing mentorship activities with you all, right? So example of that is working on the cry tools update with you, Marco. The stuff that Carlos has been doing with Marco and Veronica. I want to have us build a body of knowledge that is accessible offline, so to speak, where you can work through some of the stuff asynchronously. Maybe there is some synchronous time where we talk through an agenda and we talk through what you want to learn. We record a session, people can view it offline because that session will not always work for schedules. Adolfo, I will speak to you offline because I know you have interest in becoming a release manager associate, and we've discussed that in the past. So I hear you. I know you're working on Krell and you're doing a phenomenal job. So we'll talk about that moving into 120. I don't know if I missed anything, but keep going, Marco.
Okay, so I want to thank everyone for the feedback. And one final question. So I am planning to help a little bit with this. I might spend some time taking and probably let's try. Would it be useful if I go ahead and try to collect the things we are working on, the dependencies that we are maintaining, the tools that we are doing, and compiling a list of them so that we know what are the responsibilities? Would that be useful to the SIG and to the release engineering folks? And if I try to do it, would it be okay?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, I think
Okay.
just so I'm clear. Oh, go ahead. Just so I'm clear, we had talked when you, Sasha, and Veronica and I met, we talked about what your group needs in terms of knowledge exchange, exposure to certain topics. So is that the same kind of list? Or is that a different list? Or is it maybe?
Yeah, I think it is same or similar
Okay.
kind.
Yeah. So it's like there are certain security things that you wanted to know or have exposure to, certain, I think, clarity on access to certain tools or processes or information.
Yes. Yeah,
Just
something
dumping
like
all of that in a doc, and that can help clarify the boundaries as well of your role, because then you'll know, it puts everybody here on notice of like, okay, here's where a release associate needs support.
Okay, sounds good. I will follow up with you in the upcoming days so we can see about how exactly we want to proceed.
That's good. This is great.
And
yeah, really good job.
If no one has any other feedback, I would want to thank you all for the feedback we received so far. If you want to work on this, feel free to ping us, and if you have any other feedback, feel free to write it in Slack. It will be very useful. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, here's just one thing, like maybe taking a look at the project board of release engineering items and being like, I could do that, but I don't have knowledge of X, or I could do that, but this is like a lot of steps, and maybe we break this down. And that might be just a helpful triggering mechanism. So like getting that list together, just a suggestion.
Yeah, that's a good one.
So I think Tim had something to say.
A couple comments. As we started this, we started with a discussion of the role handbooks, but I didn't really feel like we closed on action there. We've had an open item for consolidating those for a while. I know it's on your plate,
Yeah.
Stephen. I don't know if you'd be comfortable delegating that to Marco and others, or if you think you'll get around to that this cycle.
So yeah, so the primary reason for it not getting done is we've had updates to the handbook throughout that would cause a massive diff in the update that I'm doing. So I have to basically scrap it and start over. if anyone is looking at the handbooks and you have comments, updates that you want to make, like, let me know as well so I can make sure that those are integrated in the consolidation. The reason I would prefer to do it personally is because I have context on all of the things that need done. And it is harder, slower to do a review as opposed to writing the content myself. So that's for the handbooks at least. Basically what's going to happen, all of the tasks that are release management related will be pulled out into its own file. Carlos, the update that you did recently, I had requested that you pull the image promotion stuff out into a separate location too, and that's kind of part of the consolidation. I didn't want to put new content into those handbooks. One of one of the things that would is under purview for the release managers is doing reviews on cherry picks, and doing cherry pick approvals. Do not be afraid to do that. I have seen some hesitancy to actually do the approvals.
Yeah.
Like doing the updates in the spreadsheet, but not the approvals, which turns into people DMing me and asking me when the thing is going to merge. So as a release manager, you have the power and you should exercise that power for approving these things. If you do not feel comfortable with approving a certain PR, reach out to the team. We have a private Slack channel for exactly that kind of thing. But if you are sweeping the content, because like I usually end up running through like quick iterative dependency updates, and Tim does a lot of like the background, making sure the cherry picks merge. So I'd really like to get that stuff delegated to more people, but it's going to require you exercising the power that you have. You have the power, please use it. If you have questions about using the power, let us know.
Yeah, thank you. I'm like I did like last week I was updating the spreadsheet and didn't like approve because I was afraid to do the wrong stuff in quotes, and also because like we don't like have an explicit process. I'd like to see like if we can have like in the future some documentation regarding cherry picks process that feels like at least feels me a little bit more. I have a safe net that I can like see, and if it like not matches the process, I can reach out to the channel and we can talk about that. But
Yeah,
maybe
for sure.
like some PRs I saw like, oh, this is okay because the parent PR is merged and all this stuff, but I'm not feel like comfortable to like doing the cherry picks and all the stuff. But maybe because myself, but now
So
you give me some like, okay, I can exercise my power.
you have recorded blessing. So we have some documentation. Tim, I think since you spend a decent chunk of time doing that, would you like to look over the documentation and think about opportunities for improvement?
Yeah, I can do that. And Carlos, if there are things where you feel that the criteria is unclear for when you choose to merge something, those can be added to the document or start as a question. I'm unsure of this because I don't understand this. Whatever this is something that should be in the document. And then we can write up a paragraph and give it to Stephen to put in the document when he updates it.
Cool, sounds good.
Yeah, I mean, I think what we're talking about right now is just generally empowerment of this group. And so there's a lot of knowledge and information that this group is seeking to be able to do the work. And so, I mean, perhaps part of Marco's listing of these different items is that we just highlight the documentation needs. We know we have quite a few of them. And so if we have a body of work that we know we need to achieve to make everyone feel like they can contribute in the ways that they want to, then that will be one huge hurdle that we'll pass over. I think it's just a matter of organizing that data in a single place and we look at it together. We're making strides toward that. We have our project board, it's updated. We are starting to look at these batches of work in groups, but the more of us doing that, it just means that we start to build a plan for how we want to tackle some of these needs.
Yeah, to be super clear, I want to work on less stuff. I want Tim to work on less stuff. I want I want Sasha, I want Jorge to work on less stuff. So that requires good documentation. That requires understanding of the process across the board. That requires, I think, the flip side of this of the associates discussion is that, and this is just a general note for everyone. It's I think in previous cycles I've said tenacity, right? There needs to be a genuine interest in working on stuff and tackling things even when the boundaries of what you have to work on are a little fuzzy. That is, I know that's not an easy thing to say or do, but it is most of how I learned the stuff that I'm working on right now. So I think a really good example, and I'm curious, Dan, would you be interested in giving a chat or something? Dan is a really excellent example of someone who is not a release manager associate and dove in, absolutely dove in, right? And hit a bunch of things that he was not sure about, asked the right questions, did the thing, became a release manager associate, and very soon afterwards became a release manager, because it was almost detrimental for us to not have him have that access to do the work. Dan, I'd be interested if you would be curious if you'd be interested in like giving a chat to the associates or something about some of the techniques that you or things that you think about when you're working through issues.
Yeah, I'd definitely be more than happy to do that. I think that coming from some of the CI signal side of things definitely helps, right? Because you're basically looking for things that are breaking. And so, yeah, I'd be happy to put together a YouTube video or something like that for folks that are looking to take on some more work.
Yeah, I will find that quite useful.
Cool. Dan, can you work with Lori and think about a
We'll
time
set
to
that up.
word?
Like, no one was going to yell at you if you do something wrong. We're all here to help, and this is a really great environment for learning, like, because I think we're all aligned and just trying to help each other. So you don't need to worry about making any sort of mistake or error, but of course that part means ask for the help when you're not sure of something. You do that, you're golden.
Yeah, I think you'll find that the pro tip, a lot of the things that have been like massive outages are things that we didn't know before, right? Things that we didn't know, little hurdles that we've run into in an Inago that we figured out. We figured out as a group, right? So really, don't be afraid to ask questions, to feel like it's okay to fail. It really is. That's how you learn. So if you have the questions, like dive in. If you have the questions, just ask, seriously.
Mm-hmm. If you're not sure of something, that means there's probably 10, 20 more people that aren't either.
Exactly.
You're not alone. Like, it's just not there. And your gut is telling you things that you can listen to comfortably. Like, it's missing. And it's data that we need to have to help each other be more informed about how this stuff all works.
So with 2 minutes left, I'm going to try to jump through this stuff really quickly. The first is a really cool tool. Download kubernetes.com. Chuck Ha recently did an update to it and mentioned it on Twitter. And I was like, hey, man, it'd be cool if we could use that. And he was like, you totally can. And so we had that donated into Kubernetes SIGs. So check out that website. That's something that release engineering, so this is an opportunity for contribution here, right? This is something that release engineering will be maintaining moving forward. There is an open issue around switching the site to Netlify, I believe that Sasha opened. Jeff is going to be working on that, but if people are interested in working together with Jeff, let us know and we'll get you connected. The last bit is Marco, the Hypercube update. Where are we at? I know we need to close the books on it, but it sounds like the next question is a tricky question.
Yeah, so a quick update. I will try to be quick since we have only 1 minute left. But we had a problem reported that Hypercube doesn't work well since some releases and on Debian Buster, Debian 10, and it appears that with the last patch releases it was fixed. And I was not able to reproduce the issue that was originally reported. And the folk who created the issue said that they can't produce it anymore as well, which is a good sign. I personally had some other problems, but that were not reported by folks. So I'm not sure have I done something wrong, but I think the original issue that was in the progress or in the backlog, wherever, can be closed. And if there's need, we can replace it with another one if folks still have problems. But so far, I think it got improved a bit.
So Marco, would you mind spinning up a thread on the release managers at Kubernetes.io mailing list to chat about that a little bit? I have to hop for another meeting, but my feeling is that there is a fix, and the fix would be to use Stretch for Hypercube, but that makes it tricky because then Stretch and Buster are being used simultaneously on the same branch, and I don't like that. But the overarching issue is managing Hypercube is difficult, and it continues to be difficult. And that's the reason we deprecated it, but it's still causing problems for previous branches. So we need to discuss a resolution for that, not just for the current issue, but for Hypercube issues that will crop up throughout the cycle that we need to maintain it for. So thank you everyone for having this awesome chat. We will catch you at the next one. Later.
Thank you. Bye-bye.